Hello, everybody. Good evening. Yay. Welcome. I'm Maureen Reidy, the President and CEO of the Paley Center for Media, and welcome. I'm so thrilled to be here with all of you this evening. It is truly my great pleasure to welcome you to a very important and timely discussion about Jewish representation on television. This program is part of our ongoing effort to examine media's powerful shaping influence and unique ability to raise awareness around the growing crisis of anti-Semitism. This conversation and all of the events in our Combating Antisemitism series seeks to shine a light on how media in all its forms can educate, inform, and make an impact on this vitally important issue. All programs in this series are made possible by Ronald S. Lauder, whom we sincerely thank for his most generous support. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to our esteemed board members and trustee emeritus who are here with us tonight, Catherine Oliver and Lorene Arvis. We're so thrilled to have you here. You know, never before has Paley's mission been more vital, as media has been the undisputed connector during these unprecedented times. And Paley is uniquely positioned to meet this moment with impactful conversations led by influential leaders such as the folks that we have here with us tonight. We are honored to bring these creators, actors, and cultural leaders together to discuss the critical importance of portraying the Jewish community and culture authentically on television and how accurate and multidimensional representation can help to combat the rising tide of anti-Semitism, not only here in the US, but worldwide. We are truly honored to welcome to the Paley stage Emmy, Golden Globe, and SAG award-winning actress Juliana Margulies, actor, director, producer, and musician Adam Goldberg is here, the author of the New York Times best-selling book and creator of the acclaimed series Fleischman is in Trouble, Taffy Brodesser-Akner, executive producer and showrunner of the hit series The Good Doctor, and the creator and showrunner of the groundbreaking drama House. David Shore is here. And we're thrilled to have the General Counsel and Associate Executive Vice President of the World Jewish Congress, Menachem Rosensaft, is here. And now it is my sincere pleasure to introduce our esteemed moderator for the evening, the New York Times critic at large, Jason Zinoman. So Jason was the first comedy critic at the New York Times and has written the On Comedy column since 2011. Before writing about comedy, he was the theater critic, reporter, and a columnist for the Times. And prior to working at the Times, he was the chief critic and theater editor at Time Out New York. Now I ask you all to join me in welcoming Jason Zinoman.
I'm thrilled to be here with this fantastic panel. Thinking about this subject, the first time I ever saw myself represented on screen that I can remember as a Jewish person, I was a kid, and it was on stage. There was a musical called March of the Falsettos. People have heard of this one. There was a 13-year-old boy named Jason who really needs to see a psychiatrist in this musical, and I could identify. That show, its opening number, one of the greatest in musical theater history, in my opinion, for people who might know, is 4 Jews in a room bitching. I can promise you that tonight will not be that, because we have more than 4 people. I am really honored to be with this illustrious panel we're lucky to have here. First, I'm going to introduce each one, and then we'll start questions. And at the end, for about 10 minutes, we'll open it up for Q&A. So if you have anything you want to ask, you could start thinking about that. First off, the General Counsel and Associate Executive Vice President of the World Jewish Congress, the author of poems Born in Bergen-Belsen, and the co-author, with his daughter Jody, of A Measure of Justice, The Early History of German Jewish Reparations, Menachem Rosensaft. The next actor played the Hebrew Hammer, which means he definitely belongs on this panel. He is also the character that Jews like myself most identified with in Dazed and Confused. He's been brilliant in many different movies like A Beautiful Mind, Saving Private Ryan, 2 Days in Paris. And currently, as you saw in that earlier clip, he stars in the CBS drama The Equalizer. Welcome, Adam Goldberg. Okay, next up is a colleague of mine, one of the greatest culture journalists of her generation. She's one of the few people I've seen whose profiles were so exceptional that she literally changed the way her peers, myself included, wrote. So when I heard that she was going to start writing books and making television shows, I felt a little bit like Michael Jordan's teammates did when he found out he wanted to go play baseball. Why would you possibly do it? But she did much better than he did, writing a hilarious, perceptive book, Fleischman is in Trouble, which he then produced, wrote, and show ran into a hit series. And her second novel, Long Island Compromise, will be published by Random House next year. Welcome, Taffy Brodesser-Akner.
Welcome to the stage.
Next up is the executive producer and co-showrunner on the ABC drama A Good Doctor, which was recently renewed for its 7th season. Prior to that, he created and was showrunner of House, a wonderful show which ran on Fox for 8 seasons. He won the Emmy Award for Outstanding Writing for a Drama Series, the Humanitas Prize, Peabody Award, and Writers Guild America Award. Please welcome David Shore. And last, the wonderful star of television, theater, streaming, and film, and she's written a memoir, Sunshine Girl, which I heartily recommend. She's won Emmys, an Emmy, Golden Globe, Lucille Ortel, Screen Actors Guild Award. She's probably best known for her roles in ER and The Good Wife. And currently, she's stealing scenes on The Morning Show. So welcome, Juliana Margulies. So I wanted to start to say that in the last couple of years, I've noticed this conversation has really changed. And both the kind of in-your-face anti-Semitism in popular culture seems much more apparent. And more art, I notice, are tackling these issues. People are talking about representation. This kind of event is going on now. And also, I see a lot of people now speaking out in a way that I didn't. One of whom I wanted to start with you, Adam, because I've noticed on social media you've been very outspoken.
I quit Twitter recently, but yeah. Yeah, we could discuss that, sure.
Yeah, I would love to know what inspired that, and if you've noticed a change in the conversation both on these issues and also in terms of stories you can tell.
Right. Well, I mean, my feeling about, I guess my personal experience has been that, I grew up in a way where, I went to Jewish day school, grew up in Los Angeles, then I went to a school that was very progressive and for all intents and purposes felt Jewish, I guess, though not strictly speaking a Jewish school. And so anti-Semitism, I guess, felt like a kind of, it felt like a historical thing that we learned about and read about and were warned about. But I really didn't have much experience with it. And when I decided to become an actor, I felt like, well, I'll just get all the sorts of roles that I got like in high school, where I'd be like in like Bury the Dead and Our Town. And, I didn't understand this idea of typecasting and that kind of thing. Well, anyway, at the risk of going through my entire experience over the course of 34 years, I mean, I think that with the early days of the internet, when you could first, it wasn't Googling, I don't know what it was, yourself, I found myself on a page with a bunch of other names, Sarah Silverman, I remember, and it was some sort of white supremacist, like Nazi HTML page at the time, But I think the sort of confluence of social media, and then I'll just be real frank, at least for me, in 2016, during during the presidential, really during the primaries, the Republican primaries, let's just call it for what it is. And I was pretty outspoken about my politics, which weren't particularly Jewish. I began to get, I have a folder on my phone called Nazis, and I use that term not very lightly. It used to be kind of a funny term, and Dazed and Confused, like, oh, I'm being, chased by a Nazi or something. It seems sort of, but these are people who were really owning the word, owning the imagery. It was a lot of like Holocaust era imagery and that sort of thing. And because, I have a big mouth and I get very easily, I guess, triggered. I engaged with these people off and on throughout the course of the last several years. And, it seemed to be something, again, somewhat unrelated to my politics. It was something that they could latch onto and, I suppose easily offend me with. And I guess to that end, they were probably right. And, and I could go on and on, but that's the sort of, I don't know, I guess the overview. But certainly what I have noticed over the course of the last 7 years, I guess, is, the difference between these people sort of crawling out from wherever it was that they were clearly residing, but hadn't had a chance to, but somebody poked the bear, right? I don't know who that might have been, but there were a few people. And sort of, empowered these people that, obviously there's been a shift between, sort of whatever you want to call it, online bullying, online anti-Semitism, online prejudice writ large, and what's been going on, in IRL. And that's, started to feel genuinely dangerous and much less theoretical.
Has that affected your work? In The Equalizer, your character is this season. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, I wasn't, when I signed up to do that show, and this was sort of, for me for a long time, I would have to have conversations. This was if I was offered a show. So I was offered that show, so I didn't, okay. And so I would kind of sort of find out in advance, like, are you going to start tailoring it to me? Let's make, I don't necessarily want to play a Jewish character. And I kind of feel like between The Hebrew Hammer, between Saving Private Ryan, I sort of said what I needed to say, unless there was something else that was really, I felt like really served the film. And so in this particular case, the guy's name is Harry Koshigian, and I didn't even bother to ask. And the guy's Armenian, if at all we're going to even refer to that. They didn't change the name of the character. It wasn't until whatever the last season was, the third season, that they're like, oh, suddenly you're Jewish. And they asked me about it, and we discussed it, and I, or half Jewish, I guess, which I am in reality. And so I felt okay about it because it felt really like necessary. And rather than sort of shouting into the void on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, I might shout into the void on CBS.
Well, Juliana, in your memoir, when you talk about your early days auditioning, you say you were turned down. A lot of what the casting directors would say is you were too ethnic.
Yeah.
And you say they didn't say you were too Jewish. Did you see that as a code word?
No, it's funny. I think actually a casting director said to me, "What are you?" Mm-hmm. And I think it stemmed from the fact that I kept getting callbacks to play mixed race, white, black. The hair, the lips, I don't know. But at one point, I was in my third callback for Spike Lee for Jungle Fever. And he said, "There's no black in you at all." And I said, "No, Jewish, sorry." And I crept out. When you're trying to just get a job.
Right.
Back then, now I don't think you could ever do that. You'd have to say immediately, the casting directors probably have to do more homework to find out that there's no black in me. But they all said, "You're too exotic looking. You're too different looking. You need to go to Europe." And you could probably get work there. And actually, my first pilot that I ever did, Tom Fontana cast me as a tiny part, playing a nurse, as I do, named Linda. She was just Linda. There was no ethnic anything background to her. And ABC told him, "No, she's too ethnic looking. We don't want to hire her." And he said, "I'm hiring her." And because of Tom Fontana, actually, I got my first pilot. It didn't go, but that sort of helped me get rid of the what do we do with her? She doesn't look American, was what I was told.
Yeah, I got a lot of we're going all American,
Yeah.
which is just like so crazy.
It's crazy, yeah.
The title of this panel is Media's Role in Combating Antisemitism. So I kind of wanted to sort of look at the assumption here and open this up. Like, can TV play a role in combating what you were talking about earlier? And if so, what? What can it do? And anybody feel free to speak up.
Well, I suppose the most important thing media can do is to create a positive image of Jews and a natural image of Jews. Because very often what you have is Jewish characters who are either stereotypes, where it's a shtick, or in certain instances, as in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where it's a genuine character from a genuine era, but it doesn't help contemporarily. On the other hand, what you too often have, and by the way, mainstream television has been fine. I don't think there is much anti-Semitism that we can find in network television. But what you find more often than not is characters who happen to be Jewish, but they have absolutely no identification of them as Jews, other than maybe, Josh Lyman at some point in The West Wing, grandfather was in Auschwitz. Okay, check. Or Paris and Gilmore Girl had a bat mitzvah. Check. And that's it. There was a show that very few people remember, 20, 25 years ago, called The Trials of, I think it was a trial of Rosie O'Neill or something like that, with Sharon Gless, which was memorable because she was in the LA Public Defender's Office, and her boss, played by Ron Rifkin, wore a yarmulke and was an modern Orthodox Jew, and his Judaism was central to his persona. And if that gets seen, the idea is, oh, this is a person whose being Jewish led him to become a public defender, which is different from just a stereotype.
So that you're saying is a positive thing, is a good thing. Is a character, in your opinion, who just happens to be Jewish but is not explicitly Jewish, is that a negative? Is that a harmful thing?
No, it's not a negative. It's just a non-factor. Because if you, again, you have a character, let's say, sorry, I'm dating myself, but it's on LA Law, Lenny Briscoe. Yeah, everybody knows he's half Jewish, he's half Catholic. But neither...
And I wrote for the show.
It came out in one of the episodes. But the point being, that's exactly my point.
That's the problem.
It played no role. And that's...
Isn't the classic
That was
example?
amazing.
Well, David, why is this? Well, I mean, the classic example I think of is Seinfeld, is George in Seinfeld, right?
Yeah.
That's
A Jew.
A Jew, clearly, but he doesn't say it. Why, from the point of view, we have our two showrunners here. Why does this happen?
Well, for a long, long time, Jews have been well represented behind the camera. There were lots of Jewish writers, Jewish directors right from the beginning, but not in front of the camera because Hollywood was afraid of that. Hollywood was afraid of going ethnic. And so they kind of wrote what they knew and wrote people that acted like them but didn't identify them as Jews. It was kind of the opposite of what we're seeing today, where every ethnic group wants to see themselves represented on TV. And we were getting represented, but not really. Like there were, I
So
can't
it's like
think of,
affirmative action for Gentiles. Cast them.
but there were so many characters on TV that were clearly Jewish, but didn't call themselves Jewish. And Briscoe was probably a class example. His humor was kind of Borscht Belt humor, and he just was that. But they rarely, I guess they did say he was Jewish at some point, but rarely.
Yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: probably the most Jewishly identified character on network television recently was the character of Ziva David on NCIS, and she was a major forceful character who happened to be an Israeli ex-Mossad agent. Interesting, fine, but hardly useful from the as setting a role model for a kid, or suggesting to an African American or Hispanic kid that, hey, there's something interesting about being Jewish. There's something valuable about being Jewish.
Let me get Taffy in. One argument people give for representation, right, is that for young people, seeing somebody like yourself is really expands their horizons, right?
Yeah.
And one, I wonder if you agree with that. And two, if you have personal experience of this.
I do. Thank you for asking me. The first Jewish character I ever saw on television was on Little House on the Prairie.
Oh my.
Like a Jew who was there to like court Nellie. And it was a crisis in Walnut Grove because this short little guy who wouldn't drink milk with his meat, I'm telling you, was like, I mean, it was like a couple of seasons, and then it was a couple of episodes, and then it was over. And I was like, wow, I guess that's what the world thought of us back when we were pioneers. Because I grew up in a very Jewish, all I knew were Jews. But then as I got older, I did not know Jewish characters. I actually have a more cynical view of it than David does, that I think that there is a great tradition of assimilation in us. Yeah. And that when we create a character, it is like fulfilling like a Freudian mission to watch a gorgeous Gentile play us. But I will tell you, I became, it's true, I became obsessed, not with Jewish characters, because there were none, but Jewish actors. And I will say that at my yeshiva, we knew that one of us was making out with George Clooney. And we were very proud. And other than that, you're talking about streaming, and the most Jewish show I have seen in years is The Patient. Has everyone seen The Patient on my network, FX? Yeah. First of all, I will say I'm not in the business of promoting anything right now. I, like David, am a Writers Guild member on strike, but I'm here because this is an important topic. So I'll just say that, and we should get a good contract. And David's on the negotiating committee, and it's great. Thank you. But I had never seen representation like I saw on The Patient. It was an unaffiliated Jew. It was an unaffiliated Jew married to a cantor whose child had become more religious than her and wouldn't eat at her house. And the minute I saw that Tupperware come out, I was like, oh, I get it now. Like this is what representation is. Like I was home. So that's
all us young Jews had to look to Stockholm for representation.
Right. I mean,
that's a Nobel Prize reference.
Right. But that's like, I don't think that could happen on network television. You have Adam here asking what his Hebrew name is because he doesn't even know it. No one told it to him. Right. But like, I don't think that could happen on network television because it's too specific, and network television is too concerned with its mass audience.
No, let's be clear, like that episode I did is an episode in year 3 of a show that is, and I I'm like really wary of using it. I'll just say it's a very progressive, it's a very woke show, right?
Yeah.
But I mean that in the best possible way, not in this DeSantis way. But I'm sort of like, we're in the year 2. I'm like, come on already. It's like people are getting shot outside temples. Like, let's go already. And then finally year 3, you get an episode, and that's it.
I mean, this
Go ahead.
week there were people with Nazi flags outside of Disney World, like just proudly. Okay.
Sort of going back to its roots.
Todd.
Can't say anything about Walt. I mean, can't say anything about Henry Ford.
No, I was making an observation when I was asked to join this panel. I was doing ADR. For those of you who don't know, that's additional recording so when they shoot the show, then you have to come in and fix things for the sound. And I was looking at my character on the morning show, and my character on the show wears a cross. And I realized that when the costume designer, who I love and I think is brilliant, put it on me in my first fitting, I didn't even flinch.
Right.
I just said, I immediately went to what I do for homework as an actress. Oh, okay, she comes from da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. And as I'm watching it, I thought, because this character has become quite, I think she's been a very positive force for the LGBTQ community, which thrills me. I suddenly had tremendous regret that I didn't say, no, actually, I want to wear a Star of David, or I want to wear a Chai, and not talk about it. Because this character is completely who she is, and I should have, talking to her like she's a third person, but she is, but I should have said, no, actually, you know what? There's not enough representation of just normal Jews on television, and I'm going to wear a Star of David or Chai. And it made me realize, am I actually helping not solidify that Jews are just normal people too, that we're journalists, we might be gay, we might be whatever, and would that have stirred a conversation with the audience members, because there's a lot of chit chat about that character. And I thought, God, I had no idea at the time. We were in the middle of a pandemic. So honestly, when I was shooting that, I was just like, do you have your mask on? Fine, put it on my neck, let's go. I wasn't really thinking clearly the way I am now, but I realized that could have been really helpful. Just one little thing like that.
Which is such a terrible burden, because you went into this to play other people, and to have to think about this is very annoying.
It's but that is the representation thing. It's representation of normalcy. It's we don't want black characters in our shows who are the black character. We don't want a gay character who's the gay character. We don't want a Jewish character who's the Jewish character. We don't want a character with autism who's the autistic character. We want them to be individuals, and we want the audience. That is what I think we can do to advance this. Is you don't do a very special episode and then people change their mind and walk away going, oh, the death penalty is bad.
No, right. That's terrible.
Those are nice. I did, but subtly and gradually over time, because the people on TV are our friends, and they're friends that we might not normally have, and we get to know them through watching the TV, and then we subtly start thinking differently.
Let me ask you a question about, I think, one of the thornier parts of this discussion, which is casting. And I'm particularly interested in what Taffy and David have to say, who've done this. How important, in the last couple of years, people like Sarah Silverman have really spoken out about
Jew-face,
and particularly Jewish actresses not getting cast in Jewish roles. And Miss Maisel was a subject of a lot of controversy. And there's some people who, let me just ask, first of all, how important is it for Jewish roles to be played by Jewish actors?
Have you read David Baddiel's book? Has everybody read David Baddiel's book? I thought that
Jews
was
don't count.
brilliant.
Yeah, the most succinct.
Which is so sad. He's a comedian. This is what the comedians are doing now. They're writing Jews don't count. It's so sad that that's where we are.
But it's brilliant.
It is.
It's
brilliant.
absolutely right. I mean, I'm very torn about it because people have been denied their place at the table for so long, and it's manifested in a way where where you have to represent that character. I mean, you have to. That is the rule now. If I was doing The Good Doctor again, don't repeat that. I've gotten enough shit over this lately.
These people won't tell anyone.
Yeah. But if I was doing The Good Doctor again, Freddie Highmore would not be playing the Good Doctor, and he's brilliant. And I assume you got into acting to play other people, as you said, and we got into writing to write about other people. And somebody said, what if if it hadn't been Steven Spielberg directing Schindler's List, what would have been Scorsese? That would have been great. Mm-hmm. That would have been great if somebody who wasn't, because it's not a Jewish story. It's a human story, and all these stories are human stories.
I mean, what I used to bitch about a lot was Jewish people not being able to, openly Jewish people, let's say. There were a lot of Jewish actors. I mean, Kirk Douglas or whatever, right? I mean, his name isn't Kirk Douglas, right? It's Jaime, whatever it was.
Douglas is a middle name.
Yeah,
you see two first names.
right. And honestly, I can't dissociate or separate my own whatever personal issues as like as an artist or whatever, and I can't be 100% objective about this. But my sense was, just to use an example, there were a lot more Italian Americans playing Jewish characters than there were Jewish characters playing Italians. I can think of I can give you De Niro examples, I can give you Turturro examples, and probably some more contemporary examples of that as well. And I couldn't ever quite sort of put my finger on that, but it felt like an Italian American guy could go play a guy in the South, but you would very rarely see a Jewish guy who you knew was Jewish playing, and who looked essentially the same, if that's what we're going by, playing these more sort of everyman type characters that other ethnicities seem to be allowed to play. I don't know if that was just me
But my question is, what is wrong with it? Because even in David Baddiel's book, I would say most of his argument is that there's a double standard, right?
Yes,
and
yes.
your point is also there's a double standard, right? But all right, say there wasn't a double standard, right? Say all things were equal. And I would imagine, as you said, actors go into it to write about, to perform people who are different than them. Certainly writers, same thing. What is wrong with
Well,
this?
we're in a different moment now. First of all, I want to say the two best pieces of writing in the last year about this issue come from Jason Zinoman in the New York Times. And they were, I was so heartened to see them on the front page both times of the Arts and Leisure section. And they're just terrific. So this is
Very nice.
a great. But yeah. The thing that's changed is the time. It's like the kind of like gaslighting of Jews, where we're going to have a gay person play a gay person, a black person play a black person, but the Jews, they can move around. And the reason you can't really have the conversation, the reason that actually David and I can't even speak to it, is because it is legal in this country to hire somebody because they're fat. It's legal to hire them because they're tall, because they're brunette. Mm-hmm. You are still not allowed to ask anybody what their religion is, which doesn't mean you don't know what their religion is. I mean, as I said, pre-internet, I knew about this one, but we passed it around.
I remember, I was the only Jew in my class in high school, and everybody knew I was Jewish. The idea that we are not a visible minority.
Right. I mean, it's just crazy. But and then the question comes about casting. Well, who is actually right for this? What version of your show are you doing? Are you doing the recognizable one, or are you doing the fantasy one where you grew up and you wanted to be played by Julia Roberts, right? Like when you're a showrunner, you have to make that decision. And I think that in terms of casting, you're very lucky if you're given the opportunity to say, this is who feels right to me. And sometimes you get pushback, and sometimes you don't, and a lot of times you do, and a lot of times, but sometimes you can always make the case for this is what this person feels like. And if incidentally, I have not given anyone a DNA test, but incidentally, this is who is right. This is what recognizably looks like these characters to me. I grew up on Woody Allen movies, and
I know, right? We can't.
I know. Are we allowed?
I made an Annie
when
Hall
are we
reference
going to
earlier,
bring
and it was
this up? When in this conversation,
Right.
of how what a betrayal what happened with him was, and I'm not even talking about the recent stuff. I'm talking about I'm 20 years old and he's marrying his daughter. Like that kind of betrayal of, you took away from me the identity I understood for myself, which was my inheritance. And I'm not an actor. Like I don't have to worry about like the, but that as a writer was an identity for me. And then all of a sudden it became unspeakable, and it left you understanding that it was kind of the only thing we had. So
That was beautifully put. I see we're 10 minutes too, so I'd like to open it up for questions. If someone has a question. Okay, good job.
Thank you. My name is Susan Silver. I was an early writer of television, Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart, etc. I'm not saying that. I just want to say, because I'm very conscious of criticizing other women in the business. It's a horrible thing. I was also very good friends with Joan Rivers and went out with Lenny Bruce, but that's another story. So when I heard about the Mrs. Maisel, I was so excited. I watched 6 episodes. I was sick. I found it the most anti-Semitic, vile thing. So I wrote an article in the Jewish Forward about it. I'm very upset, given this topic, that more people in the business did not come out and complain about it. I never watched Later, so I don't know what they did, but when they have the boss robbing Holocaust survivors of their salaries, when they have the mothers wearing makeup in bed because, God forbid, the husband should see what they really look like, really? So I'd like your comments about it, and I wonder why more people didn't complain.
Can I answer that? I don't ever criticize other people's writing in public or anybody else's anything. Like, I just feel too vulnerable to do that.
I should have learned that lesson. I really blew it.
It is healing some wound I have from that show that you called her Maisel instead of Maisel. I'll let everyone else answer that. I think about it all the time. Like, does nobody on the show know that it's Maisel?
Amazing.
Other questions?
I-
Yes, over there.
I just want to say that this is how much education we need to do. My wife, a good friend of my wife's that watched, who's not Jewish, and my wife's from San Francisco. Her parents were Holocaust survivors in Germany, made to San Francisco. And somebody watched that show, a friend of hers, non-Jewish, and after watching the show said, "Oh, now I have an understanding of how you grew up."
Oh.
Jeez. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, thank you all. This was a wonderful panel. My question is directed to Ms. Margulies. It was very noticed by fans of the morning show that Laura, of course, wears a cross along with a black pendant necklace. In fact, it seemed like such an intentional choice on my part, or on the writer's part, that I was kind of assuming we would learn the backstory at some point. So I'm surprised to hear you say it was kind of just the costume designer's choice and not the writer's. Do you think you would feel different about it? Would it make you feel better if it were addressed with some backstory in a future season, or do you feel like the ship has sailed?
That's a great question. First of all, everything she wears, it was part of the writer's decision that whatever she wears has been from her travels, because they wanted her to represent a field journalist, because she when she was outed and got fired, she went back to the field and she started taking pieces of the world with her that she wears. So she's the only character on that show who always wears the exact same jewelry. And so, like, that black necklace, they're like, oh, she got it in Egypt and, wherever she was. And it's so interesting because I was riding up here with my friend Alex, and I was telling him what I just told you guys about saying, what if I had said, no, she's going to wear a Star of David. And he looked at me and he goes, so change it next season. And then I went, oh my God, can I? I did so much homework about why she was. Not that you guys need to see what my homework is, but the work I do to make a character full is I have a whole backstory that is in my head and I write it down and whatever. And sometimes writers pick up on it. It's the beauty of television. And I always say this to all my movie star friends. I'm like, you don't understand. Writers and actors,
right.
The writers start watching you in dailies and then they say, oh, wait, we're going to do that. And then you listen to their words and go, oh, I know exactly how they want me to say that. And it's this beautiful dance, So now I'm thinking like,
That cross
How do
wasn't
I bring
always
in the
yours. That
star-
cross wasn't always yours. You got it somewhere along the line.
Right, I got it somewhere. So I don't know. There's a season 4 apparently.
I know someone who
strike
wears a
ends.
cross because someone gave it to her, and I'm always like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
But that's a statement in and of itself.
right.
Obviously.
That maybe one day she's just like, you know what? This isn't me.
Right.
Not
Not me anymore. But it is. It's interesting, and I'm gonna. You know, I usually pay more attention. I think I was so. We were all so freaked out that we were in the middle of a pandemic shooting that I was just like, okay, did you touch me? Do I have COVID? But I think I'm gonna give it a lot more thought because I just wonder, for me personally, what the chatter would be. It was all about me being gay and was I really gay? And that came up too, you know, where on CBS this morning, actually, they said, well, how do you feel about the fact that you're not gay and you're playing a gay character? And I was like, blah.
Great.
So I can't,
Not a
because I'm
journalist
married,
either.
I can never play a single woman.
Right.
Or no one gay was upset about that. I found out, actually, thank God. But the truth is, I think we're getting to a point now in where we are in our times where it's like, so because I have a kid, I can't play single. Or because I understand I can't play Asian or Black. I am very aware of that. But when it comes to religion, it's ridiculous. My job is to step in someone else's shoes and find out what their history is. That's my work. So it's fascinating, and now it's going to be a real conundrum when I go back to set. Like,
After they watch this.
Good question. And you
Hi. Thank you for your comments. In Fleischman, in the book, he was short, but he's a little taller in the show.
It's Hollywood.
Is that just coincident?
It was very hard to find anybody
Short
as
actor?
No. By the way, when you ask for a short actor in casting, they give you a list of actor headshots and their height next to it. And if you saw how they had like Tom Cruise, 6'7", and you were like, no, you don't have to lie for this. He was much shorter, and then Jesse Eisenberg, who felt he was quite short enough, wanted to do it. And how do we say no to that? And we felt like, and I was told in casting, you're going to have to give up all the things you think you want. It's like when you buy a house, and you're like, I want central air and a working fireplace. Oh, does it have a door? I'll take it. That's not exactly, but I gave up, the one thing I gave up was that, and it was sad to me, and I haven't thought about it again since you brought it up. So thanks.
it's so funny because I don't think of him as short, as tall. I think of him as short.
Yeah, me too.
He plays.
I didn't say it. We all know I didn't say that.
We got a question over here. We got.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's so important. I got emotional watching that video. It's scary out there. This is a representation question, but it flips it. I wrote it down because I get nervous asking these things. I know it's important to portray Jewish characters doing Jewish things in a way that normalizes Jewish culture. They go to temple, they have a bar mitzvah, they're in therapy, they go to summer camp. Activities that show we are good people just like everyone else, living our lives with no secret agenda. But these days, some of the most compelling characters on television and the shows that sell and find audiences are ones that feature characters in extreme circumstances. They're deeply messed up, they do very bad things. They are greedy, power-hungry, and destructive, hurting themselves and others for their own gain. My question is, if there are broader cross-country consequences to making villains Jewish, isn't that limiting creatively?
Good question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Good?
I don't think there's anything we could do to make people hate us more than they do. And I think that as much as go see Leopoldstadt. Like you could be playing piano with your favorite Nazi and they'll still want to kill you. Like I don't think there's anything you can do. I think people, especially as you go across this country, really don't like Jews.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's anything we did.
I think it's ignorance.
And I don't think you, I think it's ignorance, and I think that I think, you know, when it's kind of what we're chosen for, what we've been chosen for. Like when we're called the chosen people, I'm like, yeah.
Chosen for that.
I know, for that. I mean, I've been on one of those HTML, as a public Jew, you know you've made it when you're on one of the Nazi
you're on the hit list.
You're like, wow, they got
I don't
my
tweet.
name.
Am I on the hit list?
I'll find out. I'll Google.
When Elon took over, that was it.
That was it?
Yeah, I was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Well,
let me just jump in here for a second. The problem, I don't have a problem with Jewish villains, whether played by Jews or otherwise. I mean, Bernie Madoff is not going to be anything but Bernie Madoff. There's nothing we can do about it. Jeffrey Epstein is not going to be anything but Jeffrey Epstein. And that happened with every ethnic group, with any other group. What I'm worried about, and that's especially true on social media, and it's especially true on some of the streaming shows, series and shows, is when you create sort of these nefarious Jewish stereotypes. And the Jewish stereotype is money grubbing, or the Jewish stereotype is nasty and is dishonest, or whatever it is. And then at the same time, in the same series, you have an African-American character who talks very positively and admiringly of Louis Farrakhan. And then it's not going to make much of a difference in New York City or in LA or in Chicago. But if you're going into minority groups, if you're going out and you start creating the atmospherics that allow the Jews shall not replace us characters in Charlottesville to thrive, and then we're off to the races. So I think the responsibility of television is to undo those stereotypes and to provide the balancing act so that people say, oh yeah, okay, they're Jewish villains and they're Jewish good guys. The good guys we don't get to see anywhere near enough.
Yeah. Well, I would say something slightly different. I mean, this was, again, just my own experience, but, you know, I used to say a long time ago that anti-Semitism sort of felt like this country's, sort of like its adorable prejudice. Like you could and it was real insidious because before it became really overt again, it was a lot, I mean, and everyone, again, has their own experience of this, but you know, when people would say like "nice Jewish boy" to me, it always like really rubbed me the wrong way.
Did they? Though?
Yeah, who said that?
It was more that they were saying it about somebody else. They were saying it about an actually nice Jewish boy. But I was like,
he killed the last.
Right, but then the last part of that. But you know, but there was this thing where it was just always a little bit acceptable, and it was really insidious. And again, I think the idea of like the all-American boy, like imagine saying that to another ethnicity. Just imagine that. And by the way, I totally knew what they meant. They meant, you know, and that's why I played all their best friends, you know, throughout the 90s. Like, you know, that's why I played McConaughey's best friend, like, at least twice. And so in a way, I was playing these really innocuous, desexualized good guys, in a way, and I actually found that to be, you know...
Nobody knows what to do with Jews.
Right.
Like, that's what you're, like, nobody knows what to do.
Yeah.
And it seems so acceptable for us to just be, and especially since so many of us are making it.
Well, I think that's the real criminal thing that Hollywood does, is the downplaying of it. Like, I've never been denied a job because I was Jewish. It's never been a problem. But the downplaying of the anti-Semitism in this country, it's viewed as just, you know,
well,
there's a few things
we're
out
not
there.
allowed to talk about it, and I've gotten this directly, like, you know, you control the media, right, exactly. That's why the Jewish episode of The Equalizer was on opposite the Oscars. But, I mean, literally when that happened, I was like, amazing. But you know, yeah, no, you feel, you're made to feel ashamed of complaining because you're buying into the stereotypes. You're buying into the protocols of Zion, all these tropes, you know, you yourself begin to internalize, you know.
Well, I'm sure we could talk for another hour on this, but sadly our time is up.
One question. She's had her hand up.
Okay. All right. Yes.
I believe that the early heads of the Hollywood big studios were Jews, and they wielded a lot of power. And I wonder if you all have an opinion on whether that power has been justly affirming to us Jews, or whether it was guided by business principles. Period.
Well, it's certainly being used against Jews. I mean, that's right what they say now. Well, you run Hollywood, and of course there's a history as to why those people were there. Right. And I also really, what you had said before, I never could, obviously I didn't know what was in the minds of studio executives making decisions in my era or whatever, or contemporarily, but it always felt like there was a self-loathing Jew at the table, is what it felt like, making those decisions. So it never, I mean, it certainly...
Or it's like self-conscious, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to,
Right.
I don't want to put, like, it's not all nefarious. It also feels a lot like, and also we're in a position of power at the studio, not we, some other we.
Right.
Like, what can we do to respond to what the world is talking about in terms of racism, in terms and that becomes the response. Look at me, I'm putting a black character on television. I'm doing God's work. But I think you're absolutely right that, when I was being raised to not stand idly by and to call out anti-Semitism when I saw it, I never for a minute thought that we would arrive at this moment where it would be awkward to call it out. Like, I thought we were all on the same page, that Nazis were bad, and that the Holocaust was bad. And now it's like called into question by people running for president.
No, that we're having
What?
serious discussion.
What? That's so crazy. Why are you?
But if we think about it, you asked about Jewish heads of studios who sometimes do really stupid things. And I'm just reminded, Jack will probably remember this, the Tevye on Broadway was played by Zero Mostel. And it was the most brilliant portrayal. When it came to United Artists with a Jewish head, oh no, it couldn't be played in the film by Zero Mostel. We need an Israeli actor. And they ended up with Topol, who recently passed away. And Topol looked like he could carry the cart and the horse. That was not the Shalom Aleichem, that was not the Broadway character.
Right.
And that was, I think, in large part because, frankly, Zero Mostel was too Jewish. And they were.
You're too Jewish for Fiddler?
No, that's the point.
Back it up.
That's the point. They're too Jewish for Fiddler. They couldn't get away with someone else. They ended up with an Israeli.
Too Jewish for Fiddler is as good a place to end as we're going to get. Let's thank you to all of our wonderful panelists.
Thank you all again for joining tonight, and I just want to thank our esteemed panel for really such an important and meaningful conversation. It is our hope that powerful discussions like this really help to shape the public discourse and influence the negative behaviors and actions that contribute to the alarming crisis of anti-Semitism. We thank all of you in the audience tonight, especially our Paley members who continue to support this effort and our mission. We are a nonprofit organization, and if you are not yet a member, I just wanted to take this opportunity to invite you to join our special community. With a donation of $50 or $75, you receive a senior or individual annual membership that's tax deductible. And it allows us to continue this really important work. And so we thank you for your kind consideration. If you're interested, we have folks out front, or you can go to paleycenter.org. Again, I just want to thank our esteemed panel. I hope to see you all again here soon, and I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for coming.